Today we are going to be talking about the best value combination from Sonos, the Sonos Beam Gen 2 with the Sonos Ones as surrounds, as well as the Sub Mini providing the bass. Okay, so I'll be providing an upfront summary like how it is with most of my video, and today's upfront summary will take the form of a sample recording of the Sonos Beam Gen 2 on its own compared with the full surround setup with the Sub Mini and the Ones. Now here's the bass drop sequence as recorded. As you can see from the spectrum analyzer on the freeze screen, the bass output is greatly enhanced with the Sub Mini when it's paired to the Beam Gen 2. Now, in short, this is a truly capable system, and if you're considering this exact setup, you won't be left disappointed. Now, if you have a bit more time for this video, please allow me to take you through the entire review of this configuration from Sonos. Now, this combination of the full Beam Gen 2 surround sound system with the Sub Mini comes in at a grand total of $1,276 and for that amount of money, we get ourselves a full surround sound system capable of Dolby Atmos enhanced with a huge amount of bass from the subwoofer, all wireless, capable of both music and movies. Now, this configuration almost didn't make it to 2022. The Sub Mini was launched just days ago as of the making of this video, and for those of you who are late to the party, the launch happened on the 6th of October, and right now, at this point in time, I've gotten myself a brand new Beam Gen 2 with Sonos Ones and the Sub Mini for my bedroom. So, first wave of delivery, yes. Now, in this video, I won't be talking too much about the Sub Mini in and of itself. If you still don't know about the details of the Sub Mini, check out the in-depth review of the Sub Mini right here, which I have posted a few days ago. Now, today, I will be explaining why I'm saying that the Sub Mini has changed the game of the home theater setup from Sonos, even for Sonos themselves within their own lineup. Now, there are three soundbars in the Sonos current lineup today. The Sonos Ray is a small soundbar at about $279. Now, there's no Atmos, no HDMI Arc compatibility. The Beam Gen 2, which is $449 and is shockingly good with Atmos support and coming very close to the Sonos Arc in terms of performance. And talking about Sonos Arc, that's the third and the largest soundbar in the Sonos lineup at a whopping $899. But that has 11 drivers, all individually amped, with two of them actually firing upwards for Atmos effect. The Arc did exceedingly well, and even a year after the launch, some of us were still having problems trying to buy one. So I want to share with you how I evaluated the decision to buy this exact setup for myself with my own money. Now, I've been trying to figure out what is the most effective and efficient way to communicate any forms of ratings to you. Now, I know I did that before, but I'm going to stay clear of ratings on a number scale or counting the number of stars, right? I will give you an arbitrary scale, which is relative to the other products that I'm talking about, but not on an absolute scale. So, for example, instead of telling you that the Sonos Arc is scoring a 9 for sound and the Sonos Beam Gen 2 scores an 8 for sound, I'll simply tell you that the Arc sounds better than the Beam. Now, with a scale, I could be telling you that the Beam Gen 2 is a solid 8 on the feature set with HDMI eARC and Atmos capability, and the Ray is getting a 6 because it doesn't have HDMI and doesn't have Atmos capability. But instead, I will tell you that the Beam Gen 2 is more feature-packed than the Sonos Ray. Now, I think this might work well for such versus comparison. So, what are the factors that I will consider? Now, I've been thinking about this quite a lot, right? And I've narrowed it down to my buying decision matrix. Now, first, I will always be looking out for sound quality, how it sounds. That's for sure. Right. Second, I'll be looking at the features and usability, whether it streams or how it connects and what feature set it has. For example, Atmos capabilities. And because I'm not Jeff Bezos, the third factor I will also consider is price and affordability. But then again, if I were Jeff Bezos, I would be stuck with Amazon Echo speakers. So anyway, the trifecta of my evaluation metrics: sound, feature, affordability. So let's take a look at the Sonos Ray. The Sonos Ray is a budget speaker. Sound is alright with 4 drivers housed in a relatively short form factor of a soundbar, relying on optical connection, no Atmos capabilities. Now this is the trifecta evaluation of the Sonos Ray. Now the Beam beats out the Ray in terms of sound. It is bigger, more powerful, and yet only 4 inches longer. There are 5 drivers and 3 passive radiators in the Beam. The sound is great, and features-wise, it has a HDMI eARC port, and it supports Atmos, which the Ray doesn't. Yes, it costs more, but if you can afford just a little bit more, you're getting a lot more soundbar for the money. So while affordability has definitely taken a hit, the feature set and the sound wins out the Ray here. Now, when you compare it with the Arc, the Beam is going to sound a little bit weaker and less spacious, simply because there are just not as many drivers, and it's definitely a shorter soundbar. But there are also actual upward firing Atmos speakers on the Sonos Arc, which is missing from the Beam Gen 2. But in terms of Atmos capability and that eARC port, it is right up there with the Arc. Everything that the Arc can do and play, the Beam can do that too. And the best part is, it's literally half the price of the Sonos Arc. So sure, if you have enough money to buy 2 Beams but only 1 TV, then get the Arc. For most people, the Sonos Beam Gen 2 is going to get you almost all the way at just half the cost. So while the feature set and the sound edges out the Beam just a little bit more, the Arc has taken a huge hit in terms of affordability. Then we talk about the Sub, right? Previously, before today, there was only the Sub Gen 3. The Sub Gen 3 is $749. It is not cheap. And while smaller than most subwoofers out there in the market, it is not exactly the smallest either. But that subwoofer really packs quite a punch. And you can pair them as dual subs in a Sonos home theater setup. Something that you cannot do with the Sub Mini. Now, if you have a large room to fill and you won't settle for anything less than bass thumping in your chest, then go for broke and get the Sub Gen 3. Sound and feature is definitely a huge win for the Gen 3 here. But the affordability has always been something that is a problem with the Sub Gen 3. But today, the Sub Mini is available. It is smaller and is much more affordable at $429. Now, while not exactly half the price, more like 60% of the price, it does deliver close to 80% of the performance of the Sub Gen 3. And if you are in a small to average size room, which you won't ever use up the full power of the Sub Gen 3 anyway, this will deliver exactly what you need for a lot less money. But note that you still won't be able to pair the Sub Mini into any dual sub configuration, not even if you have a Sub Gen 3. The affordability factor is what sets this Sub Mini apart. The price to performance ratio is just insanely high here. So if you look at the trifecta chart here, the Sub Mini does represent a rather good win here. But I must stress again that at this point, if your room is big and you're trying to fill the space with bass, you will need the Sub Gen 3. Now, we have picked out the soundbar and the sub in the form of the Gen 2's Beam Gen 2 and the Sub Mini, costing less but getting really close to the top of the game, right? Now, this combination here is $878. Did you realize that you're still spending less in this configuration than a single Sonos Arc on its own? So if you have $900 to spare, what do? Buy the Sonos Arc on its own? Or actually save the money, spend the money on the Beam Gen 2 coupled with the Sub Mini. And that still leaves you about $20, which you can spend on buying the best HDMI cable that you will ever need. Now, this is the Ugreen 8K HDMI 2.1 cable. This is not a review of the cable. It is just a cable that I've been using for myself. I've changed almost all the HDMI cables in my house to this superbly spec and well-made cable. Now, if you want to check it out, you can scan the QR code right up here, or I'll leave the Amazon affiliate link in the video description down below. You will thank me the moment you get your hands on this set of cables and start to use them. they will never leave you wanting for more. Now, if you want to round out the entire system, then you need surrounds. Today from Sonos, you're only going to get the ones and the fives, right? If you want to expand the search to IKEA Symphonics lineup, yes, you can get the bookshelves for a lot less money than the Sonos ones, if you don't mind the break in the design of the whole system, right? The look and feel of it. But if you stay within the Sonos offering, getting the Sonos ones will be the cheapest way to get surrounds. And with two 1SL without the mic, that brings your total system price to $1,276 US. Now, if you pair the Sonos Arc with the Sub Gen 3, that's $1,648. Okay, sure. So let's pair the Sonos Arc with the Sub Mini, but that's still $1,328. In both configurations, you still aren't getting your surround. Yes, you'll get a larger sound and 11 drivers and dedicated upwards firing Atmos speakers, but you still don't get surround. The full configuration of the Sonos Arc plus two 1SL and the Sub Mini is $1,726. And if you opt for the Gen 3 Sub, that's a tick over $2,000. So now, you see what I mean by the Sonos Beam Gen 2 full setup with the ones and the Sub Mini being the best value offering from Sonos today. So much value that is possibly even edging out the Sonos Arc, which reminds me, maybe with all this improvement, they are pointing to the fact that the Sonos Arc is due for a refresh maybe soon. I don't know. So if you're new to my channel, do keep a lookout on this channel. Best way is to subscribe and ring the notification bell so that when that happens, you will be the first to know. Now, if you have not yet decided on the configuration to get from Sonos to build your home theater setup, I've done some testing for you. So I use a calibrated mic setup connected to my PC, which will play a series of frequency all the way from 20 Hz to 20 kilohertz through the soundbar, and I will record what the setup is actually throwing out. You'll be able to see the response of the system in each frequency band, the bass, the mid-range, and the treble, and you have a rough idea of how it sounds like visually. Now, I'll run through three different configurations today, which is the base Beam Gen 2 on its own, and then I'll pair in the Sonos ones as the surround with the Beam Gen 2, and finally I'll round it off in the third configuration by adding the Sonos Sub Mini to the mix. So the first curve, this is the green curve. Now, how the Sub Mini sounds like on its own, this is how it looks, right? The main point of focus today is on the bass department. So you will notice that the Beam Gen 2 peaks at about 120 Hz and it will tail off quite sharply all the way down from there. At 40 Hz, you're likely not going to be hearing much more bass anymore. Now, this is to establish the bass curve for further comparison before we add the surrounds and the sub. Now, the yellow curve is how the Beam Gen 2 sounds like when it's being paired with the Sonos ones as the surround. While you may not see a huge difference in terms of frequency response, I'll let you know that the sound is a lot wider and you will truly get surround sounds coming from the back of you. Depending on where you place your surround speakers, of course, you will notice that from about 80 Hz all the way to about 4 kHz, there's a meaningful bump to the frequency. Now, this is because those are the main frequencies that are being played on the surround channel. So you are actually getting more sound out of the whole setup. But the real kick is the red curve, and that's how the full surround with the Sub Mini configuration sounds like. Now, there are two things happening here. The Sonos Beam and the ones have bass frequency responsibility being removed from them, so they're no longer having to produce those frequencies as the Sub Mini is going to be handling them, freeing the soundbar up to focus the amplification power and drivers to drive higher output at the frequencies above 100 Hz. Thus, you'll see that the output from that point onwards has been bumped up. Now, the second thing that's happening is that the Sub Mini is actually picking up all the frequencies below 100 Hz. Yes, it doesn't give the same crazy bump that the Sonos Sub Gen 3 was giving out. The room that I did this testing in is a relatively big room which accommodated two of the Sonos bigger subs. But you can already see that it's doing a fantastic job of handling all those low-end frequencies. Now, remember I said that the Beam on its own wasn't going to be heard at 40 Hz. With the Sub Mini at 40 Hz range, you're going to get about 6 dB extra volume, which is about 4 times the volume. You will hear 40 Hz. To take things even further, if you look at 25 Hz, the Sub Mini is getting 15 dB more volume than the Beam on its own. Now, the other way to look at it is, of course, at 25 Hz, you are hearing the bass at the same level, same output level as when the Beam is producing 6 kHz. In short, are you able to hear the 25 Hz? Yes, you definitely can. Now, if these frequency response charts have helped you in any way to reach a more informed buying decision, do consider dropping this video a like and give this channel a sub. Better yet, click on that super thanks button right down below this video and send me a small tip to contribute towards my coffee fund. So, all the frequency response curves aside, what does it really sound like? The Sub Mini is truly a very capable sub. It is not as powerful as the Sub Gen 3 for sure. So if you have a really big room and high ceilings, the Sub Gen 3 is definitely going to be more suitable for you. But if you don't need to fill a large space, the Sub Mini does lend its weight to the bass department really well when paired with the Sonos Beam. If you have a Beam in the first place, my assumption is that you aren't actually deploying it in a huge room anyway. The Sub Mini is a relatively polite sub. It doesn't intrude into the soundtrack or the music that much. It is a sealed design, and by virtue of that design, it doesn't pound that hard in your face and your chest, right? It's a lot more well-behaved, I can say, and if the levels are set appropriately for your room, it can really blend quite well into whatever you're listening to. So, I did a poll recently and there were 1,452 responses. I thank all of you guys for responding, and an overwhelming 55% of you guys were going to be pairing the Sonos Sub Mini with a Beam Gen 2. So I bought that choice. I'm like you. I'm buying this combination, and if I'm doing that, you can be sure that you're doing the right thing as well. So after extensive testing, I think this really hits the right spot in terms of sound, features, and affordability. The Sub Mini is really a large influence on whether I actually spend to create another system out of the Gen 2. Because I have two subs, the Gen 2 and the Gen 3, and I use them in a dual sub configuration for the Sonos Arc. I could not just bring myself to buy another Sub Gen 3 for the Beam, but with the Sub Mini, the decision was a whole lot easier. Now, to give you a somewhat indicative taste of what the differences are, I've done a binaural recording, sort of like a 3D recording of the different setups, right? The Beam Gen 2 on its own, and then the Beam Gen 2 coupled with the ones as a surround, and finally, in the full configuration, the Beam Gen 2 with the ones and the Sub Mini. So while there's compression happening over YouTube and you aren't going to be listening with the same setup and in the same room as me, it will at least give you a relative sensing. So nothing beats going to hear it for yourself in the showroom. Now, in order to help you sense it even better, to visualize it even better, I've added spectrum analyzer of the setup when it's being played back. So at any point in time, you can pause the video like this and see how the system is responding while playing that particular sequence, that particular note. So after I play the bass drop, for example, you can see and pause. In the setup with the Sub Mini, you can tell that there's a lot more bass happening in the lower bass frequencies than the Sonos Beam Gen 2 on its own. So I hope this is helpful. There are 3 recordings back to back, so here we go.
This is Dolby Atmos, the world's first object-based cinematic audio. With powerful moving audio that transcends from channels to moving around you with pinpoint accuracy. Whether the soundscape sets the mood of the scenery.
Put your vehicle on the side of the road.
Whoa! What is this place? Come on, you guys, let's go!
Or captures the full extent
Do you want to know my secret?
of nature's fury. is Dolby Atmos, the world's first object-based cinematic audio. With powerful moving audio that transcends from channels to moving around you with pinpoint accuracy. Whether the soundscape sets the mood of the scenery,
Pull your vehicle to the side of the road.
Whoa! What is this place? Whoa! Come on, you guys, let's go!
or captures the full extent
Do you want to know my secret?
of nature's fury. This is Dolby Atmos, the world's first object-based cinematic audio. With powerful moving audio that transcends from channels to moving around you with pinpoint accuracy. Whether the soundscape sets the mood of the scenery,
Pull your vehicle to the side of the road.
Whoa! What is this place? Whoa! Come on, you guys, let's go!
or captures the full extent
Do you want to know my secret?
of nature's fury.
So I hope you have found this video useful and these recordings help you. If it helped you reach a decision, I would appreciate it if you could help support this channel with a super thanks just right below this video itself. Even if you don't, do stick around, leave a like and a comment. I'll be happy to help out if you have any questions. I've also done a video on how to set up your Beam Gen 2 for best sound. Although right now, I would say that the current firmware at 14.16 might have messed with that sound profile a little bit, and that video has not been updated for the Sub Mini yet. I will definitely be updating some of my videos for the best settings for the Beam and the Arc when it's coupled with the Sub Gen 3, when the sound profile has been settled, as well as that configuration with the Sub Mini. So if you can't wait and you have not already seen that other video, do check out this video right here just to scratch that itch a little bit, and I will see you over in that video.